Hello everyone, welcome back to the course on Health Humanities, Indian and Western Medical Knowledge Traditions. This is lecture number 60, which is concluding lecture, the last lecture of this course. It is about Health Humanities and Future of Healthcare. And when we think about the future of healthcare, one cannot ignore Health Humanities. And Health Humanities is about the interdisciplinary perspectives to health care. Our health humanities about how one can consider and evaluate health from the perspective of social sciences, literature, philosophy, art, and different other disciplines. It is about how interdisciplinary perspectives, how narrative, how medical ethics can be considered as a part of one's healthcare system. And in this way, health humanities is now becoming the part of the future of healthcare. When we think about the healthcare practices, healthcare systems, one cannot ignore the politics of health and illness, because health is not just about the bodily concerns or the concerns of the mind. Rather, health is constructed in a particular way. Health is constructed through medical practices, through medicines, which sets a kind of normative order. And in this normative, hegemonic order, medicine and medical practices define like what is healthy body, what is unhealthy body, what is fit and what is unfit. It talks about that how certain kind of body, certain kind of people are acceptable and other people are not acceptable. And in this way, it stigmatizes as well as controls the people. In the ancient time, the people were punished because of the medical or medicinal normative practices, where they considered and then seen some people in terms of normalcy, and those who didn't fit in the idea, in the notion of normalcy, they were punished, they were imprisoned, and they were isolated. Similarly, illness has to be seen in a very social context. Illness is not the bodily conditions. Disease is bodily conditions. Illness is the social effect of the disease, how society describes the disease, and what is the impact of disease once it becomes visible and known to the people in the society, and then how they treat the patient or how they treat the family members of the patient. And when people begin to isolate, stigmatize, and isolate the people who are the members of the family of the patient, then it takes the form of disease. So it takes the form of illness. Illness is the consequence of disease. Illness is socially constructed, which reduces a person's identity, which controls the person's movements and activities, and also offers different kinds of narratives, discourses for control and domination. In this way, health or illness are not neutral terms. Rather, they have to be seen and judged in the socio-political and cultural contexts. One has to evaluate different contexts, that how health and illness have been seen, and this is very necessary for the future of healthcare. When one is thinking about the future of healthcare, one has to think also about that does everyone is having equal access to health? Does everyone is having enough opportunities for accessing healthcare? And in this regard, it is necessary to think about one's economy, one's gender, and how they influence the access to healthcare. In one of my lectures, I have talked about trans medicine, and it reveals that how the people who are having different gender identities, different sexual orientations, and then they have different types, or they have their access of healthcare systems very different compared to the other people. When we look at the people in terms of gender, in terms of class, in terms of race, in terms of ethnicity, how they impact, so the future of healthcare also demands a case studies in terms of social aspect, cultural aspect, as well as ethnic aspects. And it will determine that how different societies, different cultures have different levels of access to healthcare. One can think about the access to healthcare in terms of young and old age. It will affect about the concerns about the access to healthcare. And so we find that the future of healthcare is dependent upon a number of variants, and they are social, cultural, political, religious in nature, and it will determine how the health of future is determined. It will determine the future of healthcare all around the world. When we look at the different approaches of healthcare, whether Indian or Western, we find that there is a need for the integration of these different approaches. For example, in Indian approaches, we find the importance of Charak, Sushrut, and Buddhist philosophy. They have produced a new understanding of healthcare systems. For example, in Charak and Sushrut, we find how an integrative and human practices of healthcare systems are available. They also develop and recommend that the healthcare is not just about the bodily disturbances, rather it's about the balance of body, mind, and soul. It is balance between the universe and the individual. So we find that Indian approaches of health talk about not only the health of the human being, but also about the health of the planet, health of the non-human beings. So in this regard, the future of health depends upon how the planetary health is taken care, how the health of non-human beings are taken care. In this regard, the philosophy of Charak, Sushrut, and Buddhism becomes very important. We also find Gandhian approach to health and illness, where Gandhi talks about different types of health and illnesses, and it also talks about different kind of healing methods. How far Gandhian approach is relevant to future of healthcare remains debatable, but his idea is to provide affordable healthcare facilities to those who cannot afford, who are economically poor. We also need to understand the history of health and illness. Unless we understand the history of health and illness, it will be difficult to get a perspective about the future of medical care, the future of health care. We need to see that how medical practices have resulted in normative practices. We need to know the history of the emergence of hospitals and clinics. What Foucault says in his book, The Birth of Clinics, that their origins are also embedded with the forms of oppression. And in this way, the history of medicine will help one to understand that how Western medicine was introduced in India, what were the political purpose behind that, and are we continuing those norms, or we have critiqued and done away with those norms. So how medicine controls, how medicine dominates, how medicine sets certain kind of standards. These things needs to be critiqued and re-examined. And how one can know the problems of such kind of medical practices, such kind of norms in medicine. and only way is through a history of health and illness. One has to understand the history of health and illness. It will produce an understanding of the development of medical systems and provide new insights to improve the present day medical care systems. It will also help in improving the future of medical care. Further, one has to think about the role of literature, the role of narratives in understanding trauma, mental illness, disability, aging, and many more things. Because literature and narrative provide an alternative perspectives. It talks about like how certain things have been reduced to metaphors. It needs different techniques to critique the reduction of healthcare. It provides different techniques to help people to make meaning in their life. So meaning making, interpretation, and narrative quests are very important in understanding one's health in terms of the future of healthcare. So the future of healthcare is dependent upon understanding of narrative techniques, because narrative competence will help in understanding the future of healthcare. It will help in understanding the future of mental illness and its care. It will help in understanding the future of disability and its care, the future of aging and its care. Because the idea of meaning making, the idea of interpretation, the idea of narrative acceptance of one's identity will shape one's understanding of the medical practices. In this way, the future of medicine is also dependent upon the role of humanities and social sciences. Moreover, one cannot ignore the roles of yoga, AI, humanoids, and digital health, because they play a major role in transforming the future of health. The artificial intelligence has provided a new understanding, new domain of health, where they can integrate the machines with the body, and they can transform, they can help in healing the persons. However, they further raise the questions about medical ethics. That's a separate concern. So we find that the future of medical practices are dependent upon a number of other approaches. It is not only about the advancement in medicine or new scientific discovery in medicines or medical technologies. Rather, the future of medicine needs different types of approaches from literature, from sciences, from social sciences, from different other disciplines. It needs a diverse perspectives to understand the social, cultural, economic, personal, and many other aspects of the individual that constructs one's identity. And so in this way, we find that the future of medicine is dependent upon a number of other determinants. It's not just about the physical body of the person or the mental concerns of the person. So this is where I conclude this lecture series, and in this way we find, or we have covered a number of sections, a series of topics in health humanities that helps one to understand both Indian and Western medical knowledge traditions. At certain places, I have also taken examples from different other countries who are not Western countries, rather they are African countries, only to examine or emphasize how Western medicine has affected the health conditions in different countries. So when I have the examples of different countries, particularly the South African countries, the purpose was to bring out the impact of Western medicine and how South African countries resist them, or how the Western medicine has a kind of impact on the South African population South African societies. And in this way, in my lecture, I have covered how Indian and Western medical knowledge traditions have a deep impact upon not just about health concerns, but also about culture, society, and political and legal systems. So we find that the Indian and Western medical knowledge traditions have its impact on a large scale of life, and this large scale of life covers not just a medical aspect but also social, cultural, political, ethical, moral, and many other aspects. So with this I end over here. Thank you.